All right, Module 3, Tutorial C. We are going to build a timeline, but this isn't about building a timeline because there's lots of ways to build timelines. This is specifically about using code libraries to build an interactive, and we'll just happen to make a timeline with it. This is going to embody our Letterkenny figure it out kind of approach to things, and we're going to use a different type of AI. We're going to use actual intelligence rather than AI. That's not fully true. We're going to use maybe use a little AI. I actually used a little AI to help with just some code stuff, but for the most part, let's go ahead and build a timeline. So I built this timeline right here with Flourish. Very trivial. Took me 5 minutes. Works great. So again, this is not about building a timeline. You probably want to build it in Flourish, but we're going to build, we're going to use a couple of different libraries, right? So here's one I used called just timeline by some GitHub user, Squarechip. That's why I called it Squarechip. And then there's this one, right, that has it this way, right? And this one's called Albe timeline, jQuery Albe timeline, right? So two different ways of doing this really quickly. And we're not even going to post this one to our Tilda. You can just submit this by zipping up your code folder here. So speaking of that, right, we need to start with a code folder. So I'm going to write a code folder. I already have something called timeline, so I can't call it timeline, but you could definitely call it timeline. I'll just call this library since we're using libraries. I'll open up this folder in VS Code, right? And I'll get rid of the AI chat, get rid of the welcome. And so first thing first, well, we need a page to work on. So let's go to new file and let's call this first one Squarechip.html, right? Because we're going to use that one first, and then we'll go to Albe for the second one. So, well, we do need a page wrapper, so let's use our HTML5 page wrapper, and we can do everything in body here, pretending we're going to cut and paste this as an HTML snippet. So I'll just go ahead and give myself some space here. Great, I've got that. Of course, let's go live as well so that we can be looking at our changes as we do this. All right, so the first thing we need to do is if we look in our assets, you'll see this documentation links. So we're going to work with Squarechip timeline. Well, first let's just talk about how did I find these libraries to use. And I just went here and I said timeline JavaScript library, right? And there it is. Then you got to sit there and look through all of them. Do they have the capabilities you want? It's a pain, right? But this is how we pretty much worked before there were builders, and definitely worked before there was AI. We use these code libraries to help us jumpstart things like D3 and jQuery plugins and things like that. But you don't have to go looking for it because I've already done it, right? And I found this one first, right? So let's go to this github.com/squarechip/timeline. And so, right, this is on GitHub. We know GitHub by now. And we'll see here it's got some information. Oh, how do you use this plugin? And that's what we're going to go through, right, to figure it out. But what's more important, too, is we have these demos. So I'm going to open up that demo page to have that and just look at what does it do. Oh, great. This is what it does. Like now I know what to expect from this timeline. Obviously, I could go look at the vertical timeline, see what it's got going on. Oh, it has a little animation in for the vertical timeline. Oh, it looks like they're just both on the same page. So, okay, we could have just rolled down that page. Yeah, okay. So it also has this nice little getting started, plugin, CSS. But I'll talk through all that stuff, right? So as we look, let's see what we have to have. So first of all, you've got some required files here. We have to have this timeline.min. That's the actual JavaScript library. It also provides this CSS for us that will style everything for us. So, or most everything, at least the main things. So how do we get these in our project? Well, there's a couple ways. We could go download the zip, right? Unzip this. So you see I've already downloaded it before. And go look for these files to drag into our project here, right? So if I go into timeline master, you'll see dist is usually the distribution. So that's like the compiled code. So you pretty much always go into that. And then we can see here, we can find these things and drag them right into our other folder if we wanted to, right? We set up our library is the one I was working in, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and use a content delivery network, because like basically all these popular things, if people are using them, I guarantee you that they're being served, right? So we will use something called JSDeliver, right? So if I just go to JSDeliver, right? Is it .com? Yeah. JSDeliver.com, you'll see here, like you can pretty much load any project that's on NPM, GitHub, right? It's better, you know, they recommend NPM over GitHub. So when you go here, if you look for, is there an NPM? There isn't, right? This one is a candidate for just using GitHub. So what we're going to do is, well, I've already got the links for you, right? So if we go to, let's go back into our assets. I got a lot of folders open here. And let's go into the timeline one, which actually, you know what, I'm going to call that Squarechip. To keep things consistent for you. We'll go to asset links, and you'll see here I already figured it out. So this is really just how you do it, right? It's GH stands for GitHub. It got a username. Usually have the repository name, like a version, which if you put at master, it just means like the main version, right? And then that same path to those files we saw. So we're gonna do that. So let's start with that. Let's grab this, the CSS. Now we can't just paste that, right? We have to actually link it in. Now, again, if I was going to serve this page on GitHub, I'd put it in the head, but because I want the convenience of cutting and pasting into tilde, I'm just going to say link, right? Rel equals style sheet, and then href equals, and put that there, right? That is basic HTML linking a style sheet in, right? That's something you should learn how to do. Then we also need the JavaScript library. So I'm going to put that in, right? So I'll grab this link here of the JavaScript library. I'll say script. Now notice I'm putting it down above where the body ends, and I'm going to put everything in the middle here. Source equals that link, done, right? So now below it, well, again, if we save and we go back, we're going to have nothing going on, right? Because we haven't done anything. So now we have to keep looking through our page and see what this timeline expects from us. Where is Squarechip? There we go. So we'll mosey back to the GitHub page, and we'll look at it. We'll say, okay, these are our required files, check, right? Now it says HTML markup. Okay, so it's expecting you to have your timeline set up like this. So if we look at it, it's got a div that wraps with a class of timeline. Then there's a timeline wrap, so that does something, right? And all that CSS probably has all these in there. Then timeline items, and then our timeline items then are going to be all of these things. And then it looks like you're on your own once you're inside here into these content, right? So let's actually just copy that and let's paste it into here. Hit save and kind of mosey back and see what's going on with our page. So we see here, oh, okay, starting to look like something. It looks like a timeline. That's great, but it's still not complete, right? So we need to do the next thing, which is instantiate the timeline. So let's go reading down here. So initializing the plugin, right? So you see there's two ways to do it. There's just plain JavaScript, and then there's jQuery. So we're not going to use the jQuery version. This one, we'll use it for the next one. But like, right, I just need to grab this code. So this is basically just calls a function that's written in the library called timeline. And inside we have this argument in these parentheses. And this is saying, hey, this is just basic JavaScript. Like grab anything that's has a timeline class, and then it's going to do whatever it needs to do. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go down below this script where we put that because we have to call this afterwards. So I'll make a script tag, and I'll just paste in that code, and kind of go back up here. Now go look in what we have. Ooh, so now we've got something else happening here, right? So we have this nice vertical thing. Ooh, what's going on? I was trying to make my thing bigger. What is going on? Whoa, I got something going on. I'm just trying to grab this, right? So we see it's just got kind of a basic something going on. It's doing something, right? So the next thing is to decide, well, let's make it do all the things we want it to do. And this is how most of these work, right? You have these configuration object, right? And so we talked a little bit about objects before, but we need to understand what an object is in JavaScript. So basically, as you look through here, right, this is telling you your configuration objects, which means that we are going to have to pass into our, is it giving us an example of that? Yeah, examples down here, right? So our first argument was, where do you want to make timelines, right? What element on the page? And it's that timeline class. The second argument is this object. And so a JavaScript object is a type of variable that pretty much everything is based on in JavaScript. And so it has these curly braces, and then it has these keys and values, right? And so you'll notice, like, if it's text, it has to be encapsulated, which means in quotes. Numbers, we can just go ahead leave as numbers. If there's booleans such as true, false, those are just keywords. We type true, false. We don't put them in these here, right? So let's instantiate this as a horizontal timeline. Visible items means how many items, right? Again, we can just go looking through this documentation here. Well, what are all my options here? So it's like, okay, I've got mode. Should I be vertical or horizontal? Great. I've got first vertical mode. So it says, when using the timeline horizontal mode, define at which viewport it should revert to vertical mode, right? That's nice and handy because for responsiveness, because maybe it's not going to work out as well to be a horizontal one on a phone, on a smaller thing. Horizontal start, so where do we start? Putting our object above or below. How many items do we move? Yeah, so other things, right? So we just have to read through those. So let's use this right here. Let's actually just go ahead and, well, you know what? Let's just copy this whole thing. Let's mosey back over to our visual code here, and let's replace this line with that, right? So actually, no, let's not. Let's build it ourselves, right? So let's put in a comma, right? That's our next argument, and then let's put in these curly braces. That's the start of our object. So we want to say, right, mode, colon, and so this has to go in quotes. Now it doesn't matter if you use single quotes or double quotes. Horizontal, right? Let's say visible items, colon, let's say 3 this time. And force vertical mode, force. So notice, right, you got to type these things exactly as they have it, right? This is using the API, and we'll just say 800, okay? So we'll hit save, we'll come back over here, we'll go to our document, and now we see, right, we've got our thing totally made, right? So we've got a timeline. The last thing we all have to do is really just populate this with our stuff. So for that, I've already written that for you, so we don't have to bother with that, right? So let's go into our assets. Let's find html.txt, Command A to collect all, Command C to copy. Let's go replace all of this HTML, delete, paste. There we go. Well, we've got this going on. Woo, we got that big bird there. Something's going crazy. Here's the thing, right? It expects you to write the CSS for in here. So this is a place where maybe then you upload this file to AI and say, hey, write some better CSS for me. But you don't have to because I already did. So let's go to css.txt, open it up, copy, go back here. Let's find our linked CSS, and under that, to override anything we need to override, put that there. Copy, and there you have it, right? We have our nice made thing. Obviously, we can make any changes we want, but this sets it up here. Great. That was super simple. That wasn't that hard. Okay, let's make a new one. Well, it was so easy. Let's make a second one. So we're going to make another new page. Let's call it albe.html. Same thing. We'll set up our HTML5 wrapper. All right, and make sure we're at that page. So let's go down here and say Albe HTML, right? Which we shouldn't have anything because we haven't done anything. Okay, so this one is a little problematic. I'm not gonna lie. It took me a little while to figure it out. But it has a lot going on, so I want to use that to really show you how to understand these things. So let's go to, well, we still want documentation links, right? So this one I found a couple places for documentation, right? I found this GitHub, so let's open up that page. I'm gonna go, let me close, we don't need, we don't need any of the Squarechip stuff. I'll add this. Right, here's the GitHub page. Great, it has some examples. Let's add this other thing where I actually found it the first time, which is this jQuery right, where it kind of also has some documentation because it might help you, because this is not a very well documented jQuery, not very well documented library. So it also is a little older, right? You see here, last update 4 years ago, although our last one said last update 6 years ago. But if we go to GitHub, we see there's actually a push 3 months ago. But still, it's pretty broken, I'll be honest. But that's okay. So next thing is, well, same rigmarole, right? We could download the code and link to it. But let's do, again, some bringing it in. So first we have to look at it. Does it come with any CSS? What does it have here? It says dependencies. Load this href style albe timeline.css. Well, where does that exist? I'm not really sure, right? This one does have npm, so it looks like we can use an npm version of this. So let's do that same thing here. So let's go into our Albe folder in our tutorial assets. We'll put asset links.txt, and we'll see I've got a couple of ways here. Ooh, I missed the styles. Let's hope I can just do it this way with the styles. So let's say style dot thing, and I'll put this in the folder. A good way to check if that exists. Let's go to the browser and do that and see if something comes up. Could not find it. So that doesn't exist there. So we're going to have to do something else with the CSS, right? All right. So that's okay. I already cut and paste a bunch of stuff, but that's just, yeah, I should have fixed that before I started this thing, but that's okay. So looking through our stuff here, it says required jQuery, optional Animate.css. So that's really important. But what's jQuery? jQuery is just another JavaScript library, and its job is mostly to make things cross-browser, make writing JavaScript a little easier. Not as required these days. It used to be that all the different browsers implemented JavaScript a little different. It was a total pain, and jQuery was there to kind of rectify all of that. Less necessary in 2026 here. So anyway, so we see we're going to have to bring in jQuery. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of these, load the plugins and dependencies, and I'm going to go here, right, add those there in the body, even though that's, the link I usually put in the head, but again, we're thinking we want to do this. So we've got this. This is jQuery already, at a CDN from Google, right? Google hosts jQuery. jQuery is very popular, so it's hosted online. This we need to find the host, and I do have that for us on our asset links. So if we grab this right here, I will go ahead and paste that in the source. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we Google for this and see if it exists? So we'll say this JSDeliver, see if it gives us something. Yeah, it's telling me something like it. I just don't think it's on there, right? I'm looking at this here for seeing if it just doesn't seem to have the CSS. What about, let's do Cloudflare's and hosts a lot of CSS and stuff. I'm just looking if I can see a thing. So it looks like it just doesn't exist, right? We're just not going to be able to do that. So that's okay. So how do we get that CSS? Well, why don't we do this? Let's solve the CSS problem first. So we'll go digging in the GitHub, right? So here we are in the GitHub, and how do I find that CSS? Well, if we go to, well, we've got templates. Let's see what's going on in templates here. Oh, okay. We're going to eventually make a horizontal, so let's click on horizontal. And here we see style timeline, and we've got all of this code here. So let's just go ahead and copy the code, copy the raw file, and come back over here. Let's remove this link because that's not going to help us, and let's write style tags and paste everything we just grabbed from right there. Hit save, right? And of course, still have nothing because we didn't, our page background changed color. I guess there's something in there for ultimately the page number. So this is a place where you want to be careful, because if you're going to be cutting and pasting this into something like tilde, look at these unscoped design styles, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of those because I'm a little afraid of it overriding other things in my tilde, right? Okay, that's great. So we've got that. So it looks like the next thing we need to do, let's go back to GitHub. Let's go back to, right, kind of the main page here. And we see the next thing is create the data list. So this is the data that we are going to have to pass into it for our things. And this is what I really want to talk about. And so this is our object. And so it's not only an object, it's actually an array of objects. So what does that mean? Well, let's explain it slowly. But let's just look at what it's asking for here. And this is where you need to understand some code. So what I see first is this is an array. An array is just simply a list of things. And then this has these objects in them. So it's an array of objects. So we just talked about objects in the kind of configuration instantiation object that we use in the last timeline. So this is what one object for our thing looks like. So let's start writing that a little bit. So let's go down here. Let's write a new script tag, and then in here, right, we need to create a variable for this. Now you saw it used var in the example. Var is a little old way of doing it. Let's hit const for constant, right? This is unchanging data, and we'll say we'll give our constant variable a name, and so I'll just call this. I'm going to call it timeline underscore data, because I don't want to, maybe if there's something else in tilde with the name data, that's kind of too common of a name. And then I'll say equals, and I'm going to turn it into an array. And to create an array, all you do is put in these brackets. And then I'm going to give it a little space because now I have to put this, right? So now I'm going to just be passing in different objects. So let's go look at what an object looks like here. So it looks like an object here is, for one single object, it has these things right here. So let's copy from this curly bracket to this curly bracket and come down and paste it, right? This is just one single object. Let's just leave this as is, and let's move on and come back later to populate our thing fully and talk about how that works. Because we want to be able to start seeing things. So to be able to see things, right, we have to make the call, right? We have to tell it what to do. So for this one, right, remember the last one, we had to put in all of that HTML. This one only wants this. It only wants a single div with an ID of my timeline. Great, let's copy that. Go back to VS Code. Let's put it, I'm going to put it right here between my style and script tags. Done, right? And it's still, there's going to still be nothing because we have to instantiate, right? So let's make the instance call. So here we see this right here. This is going to be our instance call. So what does this mean? First, you see this $sign with the inside of these parentheses, the argument document. So that's basically saying, hey, this is jQuery. When we include jQuery, we can use either the $sign or actually type out jQuery, but everyone just uses the $sign, right? That's how it's kind of been built. And you're saying, hey, grab our document and give it to jQuery, and then, hey, when the page is ready, run this function, and this is going to be our function. So this one is saying, hey, jQuery, go get that ID of my timeline, and then run this method, right, of Albe timeline and pass in our data. So let's copy just this little piece right here. Go back to this below R, right? Make sure we're not inside of our array accidentally, and put that in there. Now here's the thing, we didn't call ours data. This is asking for the data object or array. We called ours timeline underscore data. So we need to replace that with timeline underscore data, hit save, and now when we mosey over here, look at this. We've got something happening finally. Okay, so what's going on here? How's it getting styled? It's obviously getting styled with the CSS, the layout's happening probably through some JavaScript. We look at how it has it, 2015. I'm going to point out something interesting about this thing. This is in Spanish by default, the because whoever wrote this obviously is a Spanish-speaking first person. So the first thing we want to do is change those dates, right? So let's go looking at what we got going on with this plugin, right? So if we go down here, we'll see, oh, it says, well, first of all, we see the instant options, right? This is our configuration object that we set in before. So let's actually do that first. Let's just put in, right, comma, and then our opening and closing curly braces, right? That's the object, okay? And now let's look at the stuff we have. Now they're not very well showing things here, but let's look at format date. So how do we want to format the date? So it says by default it has day, month. I kind of like that, right? Let's go look at what it has here, right? So it has 30 Abril. So that's, you know, we don't have specific dates on what we're doing. We have years and stuff. So let's first format the date. So we're going to go over here to, right, what's the thing called? It's called format date. So I'll just actually copy that. Come back over here, right, format date. Notice the camel casing. And then I got to put this inside of, right, quotes, because this is going to be a string. So how do I know how to change this thing? Well, dates have these kind of standard formats. So let's go to date formats. I'll just say JavaScript, right? And so there's this thing called ISO. No, we don't want this one, right? Let's see. Let's just actually say date formats ISO, because if I look at that, we see that we can format dates through these kind of structures here. So we want, I want it to be month and year. So how do we do month and year? We'll say short, month, year, right? Let AI help us a little bit, right? So it'll be something like this. So let's go down here. Let's go back to VS Code and let's use MMM, 3 capital M's and 3 capital Y's, or 4 capital Y's, excuse me, and go check out our date here. And now we'll see, okay, now it has exactly what I want. It has the month and the year, but of course the month is still in Spanish, Abril, so we need to do something here, which we see this plugin, right, allows us to put in a language, right? So this is what language, and it's using these I18N languages. So let's go back to our object, put in a comma, say language, and now we need to get English, but there's different types of English. So this is actually Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. That's what that language means. So that's what this person, it's actually not in Spanish, it's in Portuguese. I made a mistake. So let's just Google, right? Right, so we'll say I18 English US, right? And it's just EN US, right? Where is that here? This is it right here. This is what we want. So we'll put that in quotes, English US, and go look at what's happening here. And you'll notice nothing changed. So this plugin apparently doesn't have this built in. It doesn't have the languages built in. You have to define the languages, which is kind of a pain, and I kind of think this is an incomplete plugin. But if we go down here, it says, oh, look, we can override this. So this is great. So we can set this, we'll copy and paste this right here. What this is a, how do I describe this? This is like it helps the plugin, right? So I'm actually going to go down here. I'm going to put some space between that ready function and my call of the thing. Put this in here, right? And it needs to close those curly braces. So this is, saying, jQuery, get the function Albe timeline, set the languages, right? This is like a configuration object. So I'm going to just copy and paste this English USA stuff, right? Because that's the only one we need. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. I'm just going to make it pretty looking. That's it. That's all we need to do. And so now when we come back to our thing, we'll see now it says APR for April, right? So it's done it for us. If we're using a different language, we might have to go and write our own object, but we can cut and paste from that because this person obviously knows, English is going to be one of the most used things, right? Okay, so yeah, that's great. We got us a timeline happening here. But let's go turn back to our data. So here we have a header, we have a body, we have a footer. So we don't have to include all this, right? We can include whatever we want and it'll put it in, I'm sure. So look, I'm going to go get rid of the header and the footer because I don't think we need it, right? Hit save, go look at it, great. We're just down to normal stuff. So if we look at the body and we try to understand what's going on in the body, you're going to see those same kind of thing as the overwrapping thing right here. We have the body is an array. And the body is an array of objects. And each object takes, obviously, what's the HTML tag? It takes, well, what do you want to put in the content? If we actually go looking on the GitHub page again, we can look for clues what else it wants. So we see it also takes then attributes. And so these are all of our HTML attributes. Again, you have to just kind of look at what's going on here because they might not actually just be, right? Because you can't use the word class, right? Class is a common attribute, but you can't use that. It's kind of a reserved keyword. So you have to go looking for how do they use a class. And I didn't actually see, he doesn't document how to put the class in here. Oh, here it is right here. If you need a class, it is documented, right? Right here, CSS class. We can pass in a class in this attribute. Okay, great. So let's change this. Let's write one of our own. So let's go into our our tutorial assets. Where is that at? And let's find info.text to write our own thing going on here. So this is going to be one single timeline object. So how do we write this? This is going to be all in the body. So an array goes in order. So it's just going to populate these things in order. So let's go back here and let's make our first tag. Let's actually delete all of this and do everything ourselves. So now we just have a body with an array. So let's build our first object with the curly braces. And let's say tag. And for this one, we're going to say P, right? It's a paragraph tag. We're going to say content. And I'm going to put, the word loss in it. And then I'm going to put a comma. And then I'm going to put attributes. Now, attribute has to be another object. So I have to put in this object. And then in here, the key values, we want a CSS class. And I actually want two CSS classes. So we just separate them with a space. So you see this TL-chip and then TL-chip-loss. So I'll say CSS class. And this one, referring back to what this guy did, he chose not to camel case it, which is kind of odd in my mind, but sure. And I put those in quotes. There we go. We've got loss. Let's just make sure it's working. Let's go back up to our bird. Oh, where's our thing? There it is. Okay, it says loss. Great. Now we haven't styled those classes. We're going to have to go back to that. The next tag we want, so let's put in a comma, Let's make sure we're on the right curly braces, the comma. Same thing, tag. Let's make it, okay, we're going to be doing a date. So the tag we're going to use is a time tag. We're going to go content, September 14th, 1914. We do have a CSS class to put in. So again, attribute, object, CSS class, and in things TL-date. There we go. So now, again, we have all of this. Then we have an image with an alt text that we're going to put in. Okay, so let's keep working our way through this. Here's a comma, object, tag, right, is img for image, right? That's how the HTML tag is written. Content, well, there's no content in an image tag, so we don't actually need that. We just need the attributes, put in an object. First, we need a source for our image, so we put that in quotes, and so we have this right here. So let's grab this link and make that our source. Then after that quote, we put in a comma, and we put in a alt text. So alt, we'll put it in quotes, and this is Martha, comma, the last known passenger pigeon. Okay, that looks good there. And the last thing we have is, we have two more things, right? We have a title and we have a description. Okay, so again, this just takes a while here. So another object, comma after that object. We're going to put a tag. We're going to make it an h1, comma, content. And this one we won't need any attributes. We'll just put our content in, which is extinction of the passenger pigeon. And then after that object, one more last tag, a p tag, right? Whoops, I didn't put in an object. First, comma, object, tag, p, comma, content. And now I'm going to put that in quotes. And here's something I want to point out to you. So I'm going to copy that and do that. And we should have some problems going on. You're going to see, do you see this? Things are underlined. Do you see some red stuff going on? When we're building an object and we need to use quotes right here, because this quote, it thinks this is ending this, and this is just something floating there, and this is another thing. That's problematic. So we have to escape quotes. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, what am I thinking here? Right, I'll escape the quotes here by just putting these backslashes in front of the quotes. That will kind of make our quotes safe so that we can put our quotes there, because otherwise things would be broken. Let me just show you that it would be broken. Let me delete those. Come up here and notice, right? You'll be like, oh, what's going on? Nothing's working. So let me again kind of escape those with the backslashes, and now here we are. We've got it working again. Okay, great. So the last thing is, well, this expects you again to do some CSS to figure out stuff, right? It's got this little menu that's not there. I've already written that CSS for you, and so I used, I'm not gonna lie, I used a little AI to help me write this, because why not? Why not jump in and use AI when you can, right? So for this, let's grab our CSS. Right now, it did kind of screw some stuff up, and I had to definitely fix some things. Also, I don't like that it has this box sizing border box, right? But whatever, let's just copy that. Again, this is not safe to paste into tilde because it has some global styles. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that because I already have the style tags in there, paste that in. And now when we come back, oh, there we go. Now we've got our design a little better over here. So what's next? Well, we need to then just keep building that data object. And I'm not going to make you build that whole data object. I went ahead and already wrote the full data object. Hopefully you understand everything that's been happening here. But let's go replace that data object with this one, JSON.text file. Let's grab that. Now notice in here, I called this timeline data camel cased. So I'm going to, I'll just actually fix this for the upload and hit copy. So again, if something's like that, you got to look for these problems, but we don't have to. So let's get rid of, right? I'm going to just close that so it makes it easier for me to delete, and then I'll paste that in, hit save. Whoops, no, what's going on here? That didn't close. Okay, we need to make sure we get rid of our entire constant that's there, replace it, hit save, and there it is, our finished timeline, and this one has the capability where it kind of goes that way. I don't know. I like the other one. I like this one. Okay, one more thing we're going to do, and the reason I picked this this plugin is because you're getting to use a lot of libraries, right? We're using the jQuery library, then we're using this library that is the Albe timeline, which is known as a jQuery plugin because it's a library that's dependent on the jQuery library. But it also gives us that optional way to put in Animate.css. And so Animate.css is a CSS library. So if I go to Animate.css, right, we can go to its main page. And you'll see here, you'll be able to just play with, well, what kind of different ways can you do, fade in, fade out, like all these things. So in the demos, you'll notice they kind of come in. So let's do something like that. Let's implement that. So if we, to connect it to our page, right, we want to use a CDN. So if we go looking over here, it gives us the code on this page, right, link rel style sheet, right, because we got to do that. So let's copy this link, right, and go back to our page, and let's put in, right, we're gonna go ahead and keep it in our body tag, pretending that we're gonna go and do that. We'll save that, and then we have to go instantiate what effect it uses, right? And so, whoops, in between, I stop the video and then I close the documentation link. But if we go back to our documentation, right, to see what we put in there, right, we'll go looking in here, and we'll see that it is one called, here we go, effect. And we pass in whatever that name is. So I'm going to go over to, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to go down to our instantiation object. I'll put it here. Now, it really doesn't matter what order. Objects have no order, unlike arrays. So I'll just put effect, and then in right quotes or singular, double, it doesn't matter. What am I going to put? Okay, let's go mosey back over here to Animate.css. So these we can copy. So which one do we want? I'm going to use a really outdated, terrible one because I like it. I don't like it. I just think it's fun to use it. How about a bouncing in entrance? How about we'll do that? What does bounce in and up? Oof, they're all so gross, right? God, there's like a really terrible one called Jack in the Box. Where's that? Yeah, it's kind of fun. So I'm going to copy that class name to the thing, and put it in here. Now, this is where you would be so frustrated if you didn't know what was going on and not in this code world, right? Because if we go back to Animate.css, you'll see Animate.css brought in some breaking changes. And what it did is it namespaced everything with these animate. And this plugin is kind of old. So it is not, even though there was something 3 months ago in the GitHub, it has not been fixed for this. I already tried it. So I'm going to get rid of that animate namespace there. And then the other thing I have to do, because it's not going to work yet, because when we did this, we got that newest version. Well, guess what? We have to use an old version before the 4.2. So you could go Google for what was the last stable version. I'll tell you it was 3.7.2 was the last version there. So I'll change that. And now when I go back to my page here and I refresh it, it comes in that fun little Jack in the Box, which I'm sure you don't want to do, but yeah, hey, why not? It's fun. So that's it. We are done with this. So, right, it's as simple as that to add that effect. You've learned a lot about objects, arrays, just some JavaScript type stuff. You don't have to have AI do everything for you when you start learning these things. But again, I'm not going to have you put this in your tilde because this one's more complicated to hand this one in. Just go ahead and just zip up your whatever folder you put this in, and you can upload that to the module 3 participation grade thing. All right.